Welcome to the Underground.
Turn me up, bitch!
My Little Underground with Peter A.
It's My Little Underground. I'm Peter A. Make sure you're subscribed anywhere you get podcasts, and be sure to follow me on all socials at MLU Pod. You can also support My Little Underground for as little as $1 a month. Link to that is in the description and on BTRToday.com. My guest today is Bryan Bruchman, who hosts the Music Digest podcast on BTRToday.com, and he runs Totally Real Records. And I was actually a guest on the Music Digest not too long ago. Link to that is also on PeterARadio.com. I also talked with Bryan about music discovery, podcasting, music jadedness. So much to talk about with Bryan Bruchman right here on My Little Underground. Well, Bryan, welcome to My Little Underground.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I really want to get into, your role and your kind of order of operations with BTR Today.
Okay.
How did you get involved with them?
So I started there when I moved back to Brooklyn from Portland, Maine in 2011. And when I lived up there, I was doing music stuff and I was doing freelance photo and video work. And I moved back and I was living in Brooklyn and just taking every job I could get, doing a lot of stuff for those like local newspapers and all sorts of random photo work. And I had a friend who was working with BTR, working on the videos, and he hired me to be a freelance video shooter and editor on a couple of their shows. So that's how I got involved, and then it just kind of like snowballed from there as I took on more stuff, and now I do a whole bunch of things there.
How did your role in or your involvement with Music Digest come about?
Oh, so Music Digest was it was a show existing for a few years before I took it on that these two other guys who worked at BTR for a long time had been doing, and they basically they left, or I think like one of them left the company and then the other one left shortly after. So at that point, my boss was like, "Hey, do you have any interest in doing a podcast?" And so me and my friend Jeremiah were like, "Yeah, we'll take that over. Why not? We'll sit around and talk about music for an hour or so once a week." And over the years, it we did that for a while, and it evolved. And then when Jeremiah left, he didn't leave the company, but he left New York. The format changed, so it went from the two of us sitting across from each other at a table listening to some new music that came out that week to me trying to figure out what to do with the program. And so I started having guests on, and yeah, that's what happened. Then with COVID happening and not doing interviews in person, I couldn't do the show the same way. So it moved more towards what it is most of the time now, which is just I'm getting as much new music as possible and just putting it in the show and trying to curate a good mix of new stuff. Occasionally I have guests on for brief interviews, and which you did.
Yeah, very proud of it.
It seems like a million years ago now that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what that is. I was thinking about it today and how I feel like at the end of that, I think it was at the end of the interview, or maybe it was later online. We were talking about like catching up and hanging out at Sip This, at some point down the road, which unfortunately will never happen now.
Yeah, so I remember like that day, like I saw the line, like the last day it was open, like a few blocks down, all the way down Rockaway Avenue. It was unreal. And then me and my brother got interviewed for Newsday, and it was just kind of easy to talk about everything that Sip This has meant, especially for like a lot of artsy people.
Yeah.
And it was really heartwarming, and it was really kind of sad at the same time because we were losing a large fabric of Valley Stream, of the community aspect of Valley Stream. Like, Long Island has always been, suburban. You go to school, raise a family, have some kids, and then that cycle happens. But this was like different from all of that because Valley Stream has always been very, musical too, because Metallica played here years ago, and with Slip Disc way back. So yeah, it was kind of unfortunate to see a place like that go.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like over the years I've been accidentally digging up the musical history of Valley Stream just by people I know and people I'd run into sometimes at BTR when people come in and do live studio sessions, and turns out like one or two of the members lives in Valley Stream or is from there. So it kept popping up. And yeah, then living here, and I didn't really know anyone who lived here when I first moved here a couple of years ago. But I found Sip This, and that was like the only place had to hang out. You know, I'd go there and I like met a couple of people there and like made friends there. But without that, I'm kind of like, I don't really have a spot. I mean, not that I'm going anywhere much right now, but
No one's
when
going anywhere. Yeah.
what theoretically, if and when you can go and just like sit somewhere and hang out and talk to people, I don't know where that will be at this point.
Yeah. So aside from your work with CMJ, have you ever been involved with radio and podcasting previously before BTR?
Oh, that was weird. You said CMJ.
Yeah.
Yeah. Digging up some ancient stuff. Yeah, that was. I didn't do anything with radio or anything there. I was just a web designer at CMJ. But the funny thing was, it was at a point when I was playing in bands in New York and booking shows and getting very involved and starting to take a lot of photos at concerts. And I got that job at CMJ. And I was just a web designer, so I wasn't involved in the editorial or anything like that. But it being there kind of gave me access to a lot of stuff in the music industry. That kind of like pushed me further into it. So, yeah, that was sort of a starting point. I mean, before that, I had a college radio show, and the funny thing is, when I started the Subliminal Inevitable show on BTR, it was kind of a throwback to that in the name, because that's where that name came from, like 20 years ago now at NYU. So just recycling the same idea.
Yeah, I remember, doing college radio as well,
Mm-hmm.
and getting a lot of those monthly CMJ mixtapes. And
Yeah.
I would discover so many cool bands, a few that I still listen to today, like Feels or The History of Apple Pie, a few examples of that.
Yeah.
So, now that CMJ is coming back, do you think they'll still have an influence in music discovery?
Oh man, I mean I'm sure that's part of the mission. I know it's been a weird trajectory with like that brand over the years, because I think shortly after I was there, like I heard about it getting like sold multiple times, and like I don't even know really who's involved now. I know they teamed up with I'm forgetting what the company's called now. I forget what it's called, but it's a whole different beast, but I definitely remember that as well when I was in college, and those samplers that would come out. So it's interesting then when I ended up working there and had a lot more insight into what goes into those, into those samplers happening. I feel like you're a kid at a college radio station or maybe even high school, and you come across something like that. You're like, whoa, all these awesome bands are on this cool mix. Someone just has like really great taste. And then like you spend a decade or two in the music industry and you're like, oh, those are ads. Like I feel like that happens with 99% of your experience in music. It's like, oh, that's an ad. I'm being advertised to, but I like it, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you discover music now?
A lot of ways. Well, by nature of my job at BTR, I have music coming at me all the time. I have an inbox filled with music publicists pitching stuff, both for me to premiere new music, new singles each week on the Music Digest, or just new stuff that's coming out that they want me to hear, potentially play on a podcast or maybe write something about, even though I don't really do too much of that. So that's, at this point, that is a big way that I hear about music. I spend a lot of time on social media, and I've kind of curated my social media to a point where, I feel like everyone has this, who spends a lot of time on social media sort of like creates this whatever bubble they want on there. And mine has been is like an indie music bubble. So I'm just like, all my Twitter feed is all just like people who work in the music industry, bands, labels, publicists, managers, big music fans who just talk about stuff all the time and all that. So I'm just like always kind of taking it all in, and, picking stuff up here and there, and trying to listen to as much as possible and make my own decisions about it.
So I want to talk about a few discoveries I found through Music Digest.
Oh, cool.
Just recently, I really liked Body Double.
Oh, yeah.
That group is really cool.
Mhm.
And the episode that I was on, you played a track from Thanya Iyer.
Oh, yes.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Tanya Ayers, that's a great one because I then I think that was the first I'd heard her music, I believe. Um, but shortly after that, I invited her to be on one of our other shows called BTR Live Studio, which is sort of like bands do. Normally, bands would come to our studio and do a session, and we would record an interview. We film it; it's a whole thing. But now, what they do is they film themselves performing, and then we do like remote interviews. So they did it. Tanya and her partner Pompey did an incredible performance for us for that, like an exclusive video performance, and I got to interview her and just had the best time talking to her. That was really cool. And yeah, her music is amazing. I have no idea how some. I mean, I understand. I feel like I understand music really well. I know how to make music. I've been a musician for a long time. I've talked to a lot of musicians, but sometimes I hear musicians. I'm just like, how is that? How do you arrive at that? Like, how do you get to that zone of what you're coming up with? And I guess you could listen to that podcast to hear about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I think her music is just so, it's almost like, I wouldn't call it like, I wouldn't label it as like shoegaze, but
Hmm.
the same way I feel about like shoegazing music, like My Bloody Valentine, is how I feel about Thanya's music. Like it's atmospheric to a certain point that it's
Yeah.
not too cloudy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely. There's a big atmospheric element to it, and there's kind of like a lot of hazy, swirly sounds going on. And it's interesting that you connected to like shoegaze music because I feel like where she's coming from is more of like a very like well studied, musically trained, like jazz kind of angle, but somehow, and I think this is the thing that like drew me to her music, is that somehow it ends up being more like like shoegaze stuff, like stuff that is maybe coming from the opposite musical spectrum, where it's like more from like punk almost. Um, and yeah, I just what she does is really cool. I'm glad that you like that was on that episode.
Yeah, and the one thing that's like an underlying theme of this show is like a lot of things I relate to shoegaze. It
Okay.
just so happens.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I named the show after a Jesus and Mary chain
yeah,
song, so it's gonna be a running theme throughout a lot of
yeah.
episodes. I'm gonna relate something to shoegaze.
It's funny when I was in college and starting a band that I had that ran for close to a decade. Um, at one point, one of my bandmates, we were like hanging out and trying to like trying to figure out like how to talk about our music, because we hadn't really done that yet. It was a very new thing. I think we'd only practiced 3 times at that point, so I don't even think we really had any idea. And I was like, yeah, I think we're kind of like a punk band or like a post punk band. And and for the record, I was definitely right. But he was like, "No, man, we're a shoegaze band." I'm like, "Shoegaze? What's that?" I didn't know what that was. I was like, I don't know. I was like 18 in college, and I didn't really know shoegaze, I guess, as a genre. Somehow, I knew like avant-garde music and post-punk and all that, but shoegaze just missed that one. But he said that, and I was like, "What's that?" And the I have this like lasting image in my mind of what I thought that meant at the time, and I I think it was just like music that was so bad that you were sad about it and had to just look at your feet. And I was like, okay, well maybe that's what we're doing. Because I was like too embarrassed to ask him what it really meant.
Unbelievable. Yeah, because you're just messing around with like effect pedals, but
Yeah.
you just get a beautiful output by accident. It
Yeah.
seems.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess in that sense he was accurate because that's what I do as a guitar player. I definitely just like work the pedals and spend half the time in a song not even touching the strings. But at the time I was just like I had no clue what that meant.
Yeah. So going back to Music Digest,
Yeah.
I was listening to a recent episode today, and you would literally play songs on your podcast. So how do you maneuver music licensing for podcasts?
Oh, the way we do that is very simple actually. it's just we have a release form that basically says we specifically ask for permission to play the music on our music podcasts, and people fill it out and say, okay, take the music, here you go. So,
Oh, cool.
but not everyone is cool with that, you know. So
Right.
there are also times when I really want to play something, and people are like, I can't sign this, I can't, you know, give away this music for this purpose, or I don't have these particular rights to it. So that does come up a lot, and is definitely like a tricky point to navigate. But you know, for the most part, people are into having their stuff played. Um, I think also it is important because we do chart sort of in the college radio world. And that I can't really explain how that works, even though I, you know, did work at CMJ Point at one point. I don't really even understand that. I just know that we do report our charts for the music podcast. So it's a little more like college radio in a way, like, you know, from that aspect of it, even though it's podcasts.
Yeah, it's so strange, like maneuvering that with podcasting, because
Yeah.
does BTR, like, pay royalties to, like, ASCAP, BMI, and stuff like that? Is it kind of like how college radio works?
So that's the thing that the permission is like without doing that. So that's how
Oh,
they get
okay.
around. So it's like that's why I understand why people would not want to do that. Uh, you know, we get permission, and it's sort of like, I guess the idea is that they're viewing it as like promotional use of the music.
Got it.
Yeah, because I mean, it's, you know, obviously we're not. It's not like we're not making compilations and selling it, or we're not like uh uh, I guess I don't know. It's they just sign the agreement if they want to. If they don't, they don't. And like I said, it's because it comes up so often that I'm like always going up against this wall of like, I can't play this artist I really love, or I can't, you know, play something from a certain label, and it's a bummer anytime. But you know, I get it. I completely understand the ones who are like, no, we have to draw the line, and we have to like make sure that every artist gets this, and this for, you know, for everything. So I get both sides of it. Um, and, you know, I wish it wasn't as complicated as it is, but I know things have gotten a little more worked out with podcasts, but I feel like it's still murky territory in terms of publishing and licensing and everything when it comes
Oh
to
yeah,
music.
the waters are definitely muddy
Yeah,
when it comes to podcasting with music and stuff.
exactly. Things have changed recently too. I know that, for example, Spotify has changed what they're doing. Previously, you could put any podcast up on Spotify, but recently they've been changing it so that podcasts that include music, uh, not in every case, but in many cases, they're removing those, or there's some kind of issue. So it's definitely getting tricky, especially, you know, for podcasts. You want to get out and people to hear it, and then you like all of a sudden Spotify's like, nope, you can't run your podcast here because it has music in it.
Oh
So
boy.
yeah.
So as far as music choice goes, like, are you focused on a particular style or genre of music? What's your process?
For Music Digest,
Yeah.
for the Music Digest, I'm not focused on a specific genre. I definitely tend to like swim in the waters of indie rock, based on like the labels I follow and have relationships with, and a lot of the music publicists. Um, but I try and keep that show as open as possible to anything that comes in. So, you know, I'll have some shows where it's like all a bunch of punk bands, or I'll have shows where it's every single genre you could imagine, you know, over the course of an hour. It really varies. It's not like I put the playlist together based on genre at all. You know, it's that's really based on just like what comes in at a certain time, what I have permission to play like that week, you know, what's new, what I just got in. But yeah, genre wise, it's very open, and I try and have each show have some variety, you know, like I don't want to just have one show that's all like rock music. I try and have like at least something that's a break in there. Um, Even in like each block of music, I try and change it up. That's the most fun about doing that show, is kind of curating it, because it's sort of like I don't have that much control. I mean, I have control over what I pick, but I don't have like total control over all the music, because it's based on what's new that week. So I see it as I get like this big chunk of music and I have to solve the problem of like what fits together in like 3 or 4 sections throughout the show. And so that's kind of how I approach it. It's a sort of that maybe that's kind of a more abstract answer than anything else, but I guess the short version is no, there's no specific genre. I'm open to anything, and I like the challenge of kind of like fitting things that sound very different together, like finding the sonic commonalities between them. So, yeah.
When you get the music that's new for a particular week, how are you deciding what you showcase and what you don't?
Uh, I just listen to it all. I early in the week, I usually just kind of go through my inbox and I see what's in there. I see what's new. I click as many links as possible. First thing I look at, obviously, is to make sure that it's not something that I know we're not allowed to play. Like we were talking about before with the, getting permission to play stuff. I have a list of like labels whose stuff we're not allowed to play. And so I make sure I make sure it's not there. So I know it's not going to be an issue because I need to kind of put together short fast. So I don't want to I don't want to like get my heart set on some really great song on a label that won't allow me to play it. So yeah, I do that. I just listen through, I collect as much as possible. At that point, I only really listen to the first like 30 seconds of every song. I'm just going through my inbox. I'm like, all right, sounds interesting. I'll get that track. Sounds interesting. I'll get that track. And I collect it all, put it all together in a folder. I dump it into my my Apple Music, I guess now it's called, no longer iTunes. And I just, make sure that there's around an hour of music, and then I kind of like move it around, see how it feels. Maybe a couple more tracks come in, and yeah, it's just by sort of like feeling. It's kind of like DJing, I guess. Um, Trying to see how the music works together is what I'm going for. I want it to be like a very like inclusive mix of new music, but I also want it to feel like it's been curated in a really effective way.
Do you feel like it's necessary to have guests consistently on a show like yours?
I really like having guests on the show, and I wish I could have a guest every week. I haven't figured out the way to do that remotely with the format that I want. So, like back when you were on the show, I was in this phase of like, well, I've always had guests to the show. I want to try to keep having guests, maybe not every week, but like pretty regularly. Um, and but it felt kind of like it broke up the flow of the show, when doing an interview and then just doing the other thing for the rest of the show. Like I'd rather have the whole podcast be a more cohesive thing. And I really enjoy it when me having a guest meant I sit down in a room with them and we listen to the music together and then we talk about it. That's kind of like the core of what the show was for a long time. And that is definitely why I'd like to go back to that. You said today on Twitter that it's going to be weird going back to face to face in person interviews and stuff. But man, I am so looking forward to when I can do that for this particular program. It's not necessarily an interview, but it's more of like a podcast together where you're sharing an experience and talking about it.
Yeah, because it's going to be really weird because I have to like relearn how to like maintain eye contact.
Yeah.
And if I do have notes, because what I started doing, like when I was doing in-person interviews, I started to not bring notes in the studio. I would just, kind of read through it beforehand and we just kind of talk. Yeah. And I think I've had great shows like that. Now I have to relearn how to do all that. I have to catch my groove again, which I'm honored to take the challenge on again,
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have some booked already in person, or you're just kind of like starting to think about it?
Oh no, I'm not even close to thinking about like in-person people right now, like not even close. But because I love what I'm doing now, I think it's great. It works. People are listening. In fact, I think I'm getting more average downloads, each episode, maybe because of like consistency, but I see no rush to return to like a studio setting, even though I miss talking to people in person,
Right.
especially new artists I never heard of. But
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll see what happens. That's all.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So what do you hope to accomplish with Music Digest? What do you hope people take away when they listen to the show?
I just want people to hear something new that they like. Um, it's a lot of like brand new artists. It's a lot of stuff that I wasn't even familiar with before, and I might not even get that familiar with. Like the entire lifespan of a song in that show's world might be I get an email from someone I do or don't know, and I click a link and I like it. I ask them for the track. I put in the show. I've listened through to it and thought it sounded cool, and that might be it for me. But what I hope is that someone hears that one song that maybe I liked, I thought was good, but I didn't like go out and buy the record. I didn't become a super fan, but that everyone latches on to something different. And it's really cool when people like you tell me that you heard about a band like Body Double or something that was in the show, and now you become a fan, because that's the entirety of the point of the way I do it. I feel like in the past it was a little more about the personalities. Like when me and my coworker Jeremiah were doing it, we were in a band together for a long time, went to college together, we were roommates, we've done like everything together. Right now we both just started record labels and are co-releasing a record. So it's like we have we're very close friends, and we have a lot of like stories and inside jokes. So that's a lot of what that was. Um, but I like where it is now in terms of music discovery, being able to like find new interesting stuff and share it so that people discover something new that they love.
Yeah, speaking of your label, Totally Real Records, what
That's
do you
right.
hope to achieve with it?
I'm just trying to. It's the same thing, honestly. Just trying to get good music heard. In this case, obviously, it's stuff I'm closer to, more connected to. It's a pretty new thing, so at this point, most of the people I'm working with are, musicians I've known for a long time or friends to some extent. There's a couple instances of people who are more musicians I found and heard, and just wanted to try and work with because I like their music. So that's where it is now. It's new, but it's exciting. And I kind of started real hot with having 3 full length releases coming up in the span of just a couple months, which feels like a lot for like a side thing for not a main job.
What are some characteristics of an artist you would want to get involved with Totally Real?
Honestly, it's the same thing I look for when I'm going through my inbox for the music digest. When I hear something and it has to grab me for one reason or another. It's not with the label just the same. It's not about like particular genres or anything. It's just whatever it is that grabs me. It could be something interesting about the musician. It could be just the sound of the song. It could be their lyrics, which um, I feel like that's a non-negotiable thing. Like the lyrics have to be good for me. I can't like get behind music if the lyrics are actually bad, or if I think they're actually bad. Everyone has their own opinion, but um, as I've been like doing this and like getting really close to the records that I'm working with, that's the thing I've been finding where I'm like, I really care about that. Like I like a lot of different sounds and I can accept a lot of different sounds as working for the music, but the lyrics can't be bad.
Is this label attached to a particular genre?
No, it's definitely, I I think everything so far has been like some sort of rock. Um, the funny thing for me is that I'm a guitarist. I've always played guitar. I've always liked music with guitars. But the first full length record that came out on the label is by a band called Super Order, who are a synth, like analog synths and drums, live drums band with no guitars. So I think that's probably like a little confusing to some people who know me. But I like that fact of it because I didn't want to just like put out an indie rock record first and have everyone be like, well, yeah, of course that's what this is going to be. So it's not that much of a curveball, but at least it was like a little something other than what people might expect. But at this point, trying to figure out what's going to be next, and I don't know what it's going to be, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what comes up.
Tell me about some of the artists you have on the label now that we should pay attention to.
Yeah, for sure. We just started rollout for the Elithios record, which is one I'm really really excited about. This came up because I was a fan of this artist. I mean, he's someone I know. I've known for a couple of years from other bands he's played in Brooklyn. But he was doing these live streams, during COVID, everyone's locked down and social distancing and everything, and he was doing these amazing live stream performances that were unlike anyone else's. He had like dual cameras, split screen, like special effects, costume changes, projections, like all this stuff that I wasn't seeing anywhere else, and it was really amazing. And also the music was just like it was much more ambitious, than what I would expect from either this person who, based on the music I knew them making, or just most people locked away in their rooms working on music. So that got me interested in it and curious about what he was up to, and I started talking to him about it. And then ultimately we decided to work together. But the music it's kind of like an experimental pop. Like there's a little bit of like maybe Twin Shadow or David Byrne, like that kind of dramatic and sort of rock, but sort of electronic stuff going on. It's just a really, really well produced record. It's called Florist, and we just released the title track, first single from it with music video. And there's another single coming out in October, and the full record's coming out October 23rd. So that is really exciting, as you could tell, because I've just been rambling about it for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I've been paying attention to a lot of the stuff you've been doing, and I'm definitely keeping my eye out on, artists, because again, I'm kind of like you. My eye is always open because I want guests on my show, and I just, at the core of it all, I just want stuff to listen to. That's really why I do anything with music. I just want stuff to listen to. Yeah. Everything else is second. Podcasting, content, all that stuff, secondary.
And the more stuff you do, the more music that finds you, right?
Yeah. The more people you meet, the more music you'll able to discover.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how has your perspective on music changed from being a musician, podcasting, and now running a label?
It's all definitely had a significant effect on my perspective on it. As a musician, I spent a long time just being like in a scrappy Brooklyn band that didn't know what we were doing, and was like, why aren't we famous? And all those frustrations that like your average
famous,
like your average local band has. That in retrospect, I can answer those questions easily now. Not necessarily though. It was a band that worked hard and did some cool stuff, but knowing more about the industry through being more on the press side, like from working at CMJ to running a music blog back in the 2000s and on to now at BTR, I have a lot more experience on the like press side of receiving stuff, pitches from bands and publicists and all that. So all of that has continued to build this perspective to where after years of working on the press side of it, when my current band puts stuff out, I don't get my feelings hurt anymore. I like used to, as a band member or as a musician, I used to take it really personally when someone like there's a negative review or someone just ignored us. And at this point I'm like, man, I know, like I have, let's see what the inbox says today. I have 118,000 unread emails right now, which is an obscene amount. But that just gives you a sense of like how many things, come your way that you don't even get to. So it's not always about, rejection. Sometimes it's just not a lack of time, or just not being interested. Something's not for you, not for your particular purposes. So I think in that sense, I have a good perspective on it when it comes to submitting music to people, trying to get them to listen to stuff, trying to get them into stuff. If I send someone a band or a record from my record label and they're like, all right, thanks for sending it, but it's just not my thing, or I don't like it, I get it. I get it, because I've sent that email like thousands of times now as well. And that's cool because everyone has their opinion and their taste, and that's all part of it. It's about finding the people who your stuff does connect with.
Do you ever have this feeling, because I've been through it too, when you listen to a lot of music all the time, preparing for a show or podcast or whatever, do you ever have the feeling like, oh, I've heard, here's another band or artist that sounds like so-and-so. Here's another one of these types.
Oh yeah.
Is there like a layer of jadedness that you've grown over the years being in front of music?
Oh yeah, for sure. When I'm doing that, like, okay, I'm going to sit here for an hour and go through my inbox and click on every link and listen to everything. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it past 3 seconds. I can tell immediately if I'm not going to like something. And when you're working with the like volume of stuff that I need to try and like sift through to find the stuff that I need for what I have to do, I feel like that's necessary, and that sucks for the band, and whoever's affiliated with it, whoever sent it, because it's like they put all this work into it. Like, I know I'm probably just on a mailing list for them, but even if it's not, like, they put all this work into it, they care about it, they believe in what they do, they think it's really good, they have people around them who tell them it's really good, and they want support, right? They want someone to listen and be like, yeah, this is good. I want more people to hear that. And I'm just going to listen for 3 seconds and be like, screw this sucks. But again, that's just part of it at this point, I think. I don't know, I try to be open and I try and appreciate whatever there is to appreciate about something. I think that the music digest kind of helps me do that in a way, because I do want it to be more open. I do want to have other genres than what might be my particular interest in the mix there. So I try and give things a little bit more of a shot. Again, if I feel like there's something there, if I feel like the production is really good, or I feel like there's an interesting story, or if it's just if the song has a good title, I don't know, it could be any of a million things. But I do try really hard not to be too jaded, because I know how easy it is to be and just write something off immediately, like, it's like another Strokes band, which I feel like I did for 15 years.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, because listen, like when bands get popular, and then when younger bands or newer bands hear it, they're like, okay, if I want to be like them or have their notoriety, we have to sound like them.
Yeah.
So does this level of this layer of jadedness, does it affect your everyday music listenership, or just when you're putting together a show?
Oh, I mean, it's how my ears work. Everything is coded in a layer of jadedness, and it can be hard for things to get through that. I think if something sounds too similar to something I like, why am I going to listen to that if I already like the thing that's maybe a little better? I had an experience recently where I sent an email about, I don't know if I should tell the story, whatever, I'll tell it, about one of the bands on my label to someone that I know and have known for a long time. And I compared them to a band that I had a feeling that person really liked. and then and then they tweeted about how, like, comparing a band to this particular band will not do that band any favors. I was like, oh crap. That was a direct subtweet, like minutes after I sent the email from someone I know, so it was fine. It was like a funny thing that laughed off, and I think I like joked back at him about it. But yeah, it can be tricky. It can be tricky to deal with that, because people are definitely inspired by things, and they rip things off, or they emulate things, or they just internalize it, and then it comes out through what they're doing. And I don't know. I think it all comes down to, like, people are going to respond to music in whatever way they are for whatever reasons they are. So you can't really judge it. But I do tend to immediately ignore what I consider to be like Spotify playlist clutter, which is a genre of, it's like the lo-fi beats with like fake R&B vocals. You know what I'm
Tell me
talking?
about it.
You know
Oh,
what
I
I'm
know
talking about?
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like,
Oh my God.
and
I can't.
they always have the same kind of like sort of hazy,
I can't stand
saturated, emotional looking photo. It's the same crap over and over, and that feels like a very obvious, like, we are just trying to do this thing and get famous and get popular and get play. And I'm like, I have no time for that.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff has been in my inbox. And you know what, going back to like comparing artists,
Hmm.
you know, you've been in the industry and you've done college radio.
Yeah.
When you get these press promo CDs,
Hmm.
there's a little sticker on the bottom, there's a blurb, and then there's recommended if you like
Yeah.
blank blank blankety blank.
Hmm.
So that's you've been in those rooms and you've heard those conversations where what does this band sound like? Well, if you like so and so and so and so and so and so, then you like this group.
Yeah.
So it's kind of natural for people like us to sort
Yeah.
of do that, to kind of
Yeah.
describe
And
this
it
artist that
helps,
may
you
be a
know, it
little
helps to give you
bit obscure.
sorry, you
Yeah.
cut out for a second there.
No, yeah, okay, I was finished my point.
Okay, sorry about that. It definitely helps to have a recommended if you like, or for fans of, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it can be tricky because if you screw that up, like if you send me an email and you compare someone to Lumineers, I'm deleting your email immediately. I'm not even going to click that link because if you're recommended, you're saying recommend it if you like. Well, if you hate this, you're gonna hate this. So it works both ways. So
Yeah.
be extremely careful with that, but it's necessary in a way, you know. Somehow you got to get in there. Like if it's a completely unknown brand new artist who doesn't have an amazing story, doesn't have the coolest name ever, and you just need to say something to get someone to listen to it, then honestly, if you send me an email and you're like, this band sounds like Sonic Youth and Yola Tango, and like Portishead or whatever, you know, like I'm like, okay, I'll listen. I'm curious enough from that to listen. Or if it's something completely bizarre, you know, it's like three artists from totally different genres. I'm like, all right, let's see what it is. But I'll tell you that is a trap because it's going to be that Spotify playlist clutter genre I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Every time. It's like, oh, they have auto tune. It's just like Lil Wayne.
Oh, great.
Yeah, right.
Nothing against, you know, auto-tune crooning, but you know, it kind of runs a little bit monotonous if everybody's doing it. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. So Brian, I don't want to hold you up any longer.
Okay.
Tell people how they can listen to Music Digest.
Oh man. Well, you can go to btrtoday.com/listen/the music digest. And I also I have a couple other shows over there. If you click on my face or my name, you'll see them. There's one called the Subliminal Inevitable Show, which is focused on indie record labels, which is part of one way I learned a lot about potentially running a record label. And the other is BTR Live Studio, which is a twice weekly video and podcast series that I produce.
So how can people contact or follow or get to know Totally Real Records?
That is Totally Real Rex, I believe, on social media. And I have a website, totallyrealrecords.com, which I keep on changing every single day. Every day I'm just like, oh, that doesn't look good. I got to change it, change this, change that. It's like a constant work in progress, but you can find the artists and you can find the releases there. And Twitter is a good place to go to follow all sorts of shenanigans from the label or me personally.
All right, Brian. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. This was awesome. Thanks for having me for a nice late night chat.
Anytime, man.
All right. Awesome.